Hi, everybody. This is Nathan Cho again. Thank you for joining me again. And I have a guest today, and it's one of my interviews again in quite a bit. So I haven't been so active lately. And this is an old friend, a young friend, but age-wise, but we've been friends for maybe 3 or 4 years now. And
Yeah.
his name is Jacob Martinez. And
Hel- Hello, Nathan. It's great to see you.
yes. So I guess Jacob, just a way of introducing you. You're the Act Matrix guy. You love using the Act Matrix in your work, and I believe you also work with couples.
hmm
uh, and you're in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Milwaukee area.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I don't know if I've ever said this. You're now a proud father, right? Of a 3-year-old.
Yeah, my daughter is 3 years old now.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know, also, I've interviewed Jacob in the past. He was the chairman of the DEI SIG, or the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Special Interest Group. And he was the one who introduced me to that group. And I'm forever grateful for that, Jacob, for that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. We're glad to have you there.
All right. Okay. So, Jacob, this is my series about drinks over drinks. So before we start, here's to how I don't know. We've
Oh,
known each
okay.
other for the past 3 years, I guess, or 2 years.
It's probably been about 3 years because I think my daughter was just barely born when we started working together.
Okay, let's drink to that. All
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
All right. Love the taste of water.
Yeah, it's water on my end too.
She's this two shrinks over drinks. Okay. So, Jacob, I wonder if you could give me a little history for those who have not really seen the interview I had with you before, your history with ACT, and what keeps you, doing ACT in your practice.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I first became aware of that in around 2010. And at that time, I was actually still in school in just starting to my graduate program
Mm-hmm.
to become a therapist. But I
Mm-hmm.
had no, knowledge of ACT at all. I mean, I was kind of more interested in CBT at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of stumbled on ACT, and my graduate school program did not teach it. It was not, none of the professors there really knew about it or were interested in it. So
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of reading about ACT at first. I probably spent 2 years just reading about ACT. And then I was also sort of trying to apply ACT skills to my own life during that time as well. And then once I got a little bit further along in the process, then I joined ACBS and I started to get more involved and taking a bunch of trainings and doing some consultations with other more experienced clinicians. And then I fell in love with it immediately back in 2010. As soon as I started reading about it, I fell in love with it. I knew right away that this was something that I was going to want to be doing. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe partially is because I had some background in Buddhism when I was younger. I was reading a lot about Buddhism and studying Buddhism, and kind of that concept of sort of detachment or no attachment to your own thoughts was important to me. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I read about ACT, I was really, it was an instant connection there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been just kind of doing ACT ever since. So I never
Mm-hmm.
really stopped, just kept on going.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I consider myself an ACT clinician, even though, I think we'll talk about it later on. It doesn't always show up as visibly
Mm-hmm.
in my practice. If you saw a
Mm-hmm.
session with me,
Mm-hmm.
there's some ACT stuff in it, but it would maybe you wouldn't think I was doing kind of by the book straight ACT kind of
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been doing it ever since. It's been more than 10 years now.
All right. So are you saying, are you incorporating other models of therapy, or is it more on RFT or?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So like I am big into RFT in terms of just like trying to explore that more kind of fundamental things and
Mm-hmm.
concepts and using those clinically. But because I work with couples primarily in my current practice,
Mm-hmm.
there's some well-established couples therapies out there
Mm-hmm.
that have a lot of research and support behind them. So I use some of those and then I incorporate ACT wherever I can.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe my overarching kind of theoretical orientation is still ACT,
Mm-hmm.
but I do it via some of these other uh, types of therapy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Well, in my case, I kind of incorporate FAP, functional
Yeah.
analytic psychotherapy. So I think it deals a lot with in the moment, what's your client showing up with in front of you. So I guess part of that is also RFT, and uh, I finally got around to read this really heavy book. I mean, it's not one of the heaviest, but it's pretty heavy. Uh, Mastering the Art of the Clinical Conversation.
Yeah, mastering the clinical conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, mastering the clinical conversation. Yeah. So I learned uh, I still use a lot of the metaphors, but it helped me ask a few more questions rather than just go straight into the metaphors and thought
Mm-hmm.
experiments. Yeah.
It's a
Anyway,
great book.
so I guess you already segued a little bit to my next question. So I've known you as an act matrix guy. So I'm wondering how you're able to incorporate act in your couple work. I guess that's majority of your clients right now, right? You work more
Majority of
with
my
couples now?
my caseload is almost entirely couples. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't do too much. In the beginning, when I was kind of starting out with couples, I was trying to integrate the matrix more directly,
Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of doing the matrix with couples and kind of modifying the matrix in certain ways to work with couples.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really do that too much anymore. So like
Mm-hmm.
with my individual clients, when I do see individuals,
Mm-hmm.
I always do the matrix with them as part
Mm-hmm.
of the intake process. And that's kind of what I'm
Mm-hmm.
known for on my websites and stuff is using the matrix in different ways. With my
Mm-hmm.
couples, I actually don't. I have not used the matrix with my couples in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I have the matrix sort of in the background in my own head
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time. Maybe just a more elementary way of just thinking about like appetitive and aversive
Mm-hmm.
contextual control,
Mm-hmm.
kind of monitoring that in session, and then as the couple is conversing or dialoguing, with themselves, uh, trying to kind of keep an eye on what is appetitive and what is aversive and how that's functioning for them, whether they're approaching or avoiding certain things. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't do the matrix directly with couples, except on rare occasions. These days, so it's mostly in the background. It's not as upfront as it used to be in my work.
Mm, okay. All right. Okay. So can you give us an example of how ACT comes into your couple's work?
Well, yeah. So ACT as a whole comes into my couples work quite a bit because I try to work it more in the kind of present moment focused.
Uh-huh.
So the way that I work with couples in particular is
Uh-huh.
rather than the couples just talking about their relationship and what's going on to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
they're almost never talking directly to me. I try to turn my couples towards each other. The couples are looking at each other physically. They're talking to each other. So they're saying I and you instead of he or she.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then as they're communicating with each other, I kind of intervene. And so pause and directing the conversation. And what I'm looking there in order to intervene is how they're sort of expressing or their internal experience, but also how they're sort of tracking their own experience. So, are they
Mhm.
aware of the function of their own behavior in terms of,
Mhm.
that they're phrasing something in this way, and you can kind of see it on the other partner. It's clearly impacting them somehow, but they're
Mhm.
not sensitive to that at
Mhm.
all, or they don't appear to be. So I'm sort of trying to bring into awareness
Mhm.
various aspects of the context,
Mhm.
and then the function of their own behavior, so that they
Mhm.
can kind of understand how their own behavior operates within their relationship. And so a
Mhm.
lot of that is through metaphor and experiential exercise, and then also just trying new things in the moment, and
Mhm.
and kind of seeing how um, different things kind of work. Uh, so
Mhm.
that's kind of, I consider what I'm doing very act focused, even though
Mhm.
it's kind of woven into some of these other things.
Do you actually use certain metaphors during your work with couples? Do you
Not
share? Mm-hmm.
not standard ones that I would always use with every couple. I generate them on the fly a lot of times, or the couples will
Mm-hmm.
generate them. Um, you know, I think when I work with individuals, I have more of kind of a standard set
Mm-hmm.
of metaphors that I draw from. But
Mm-hmm.
with couples, they're always so unique and dynamic that
Mm-hmm.
I tend not to.
Yeah.
Um, but instead, I'll just kind of create one from whatever's happening, in session.
Mm-hmm. Was because I know you were trained as a counselor, right? And
Yeah,
and
I'm a licensed professional counselor in
yeah,
Wisconsin.
the did doing mostly couples therapy come to mind when you started doing your graduate studies, or did it just happen? You know?
Yeah, no, yeah, it just happened. I wasn't planning on working with couples
Mm-hmm.
when I was in school. Definitely not. I wasn't planning on it. But
Mm-hmm.
when I was in school, and then when I graduated from school, I did
Mm-hmm.
I did all of my practicum and internship work while I was in school at a
Mm-hmm.
working with children at a
Yeah.
center that was working with children,
Yeah.
and even down to like 3 year olds. I was working with 3, 4, 5 year olds. I was doing play therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's how I got most of my training as a counselor, is working with children.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, when you work with kids, especially that young, you also have to work with their parents. And so at my first like 3 jobs that I had were all working with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly at a certain point, I started working with older kids, 10, 11, 12, into
Mm-hmm.
adolescenthood. And so, like, you're almost always bringing in the parents and doing
Mm-hmm.
family sessions. And so I was doing a lot of family therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was doing a lot of parenting work, parenting skills. And
Mm-hmm.
I was also working with kids who had parents who were divorced. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, their parents, they're divorced, but they're co-parenting. So they
Mm-hmm.
can hardly stand to be in the same room together, but they're in the room together just so they can
Mm-hmm.
do a family session with their child. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I was working with kids who had multiple parental figures,
Mm-hmm.
mom and stepdad and dad
Mm-hmm.
and stepmom and grandmother and aunt. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there was 8 people in a room.
Mm-hmm.
But I was
Wow.
comfortable doing that because I
Uh,
in my schooling I did a lot of group work.
mm-hmm.
um so I was doing a lot of family therapy in that context. and
Mm-hmm.
then and then as I started to transition more into working with adults, I
Mm-hmm.
did a lot of just individual adults for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually started branching out to doing couples, and then I got some additional training in working with couples.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't that big of a leap considering the
Yeah.
family work that I had done.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I think you use mostly the Gottman method, right? Is that what you're using mostly?
Yeah, I was trained in the Gottman method, and it appeals to me just because of its psychoeducational sort of
Mm-hmm.
components,
Yeah.
which I enjoy, and
Mm. So I
it,
think you mentioned
yeah.
about, letting the couples speak to each other and you're there like a coach, right?
Hmm.
Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes I think of it that way, that I'm sort of like a communication coach,
Mm-hmm.
more
Mm-hmm.
than anything else.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of how I enjoy working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, in my case, I kind of use the research that the Gottmans have uh,
Hmm.
done as a background. I know this couple is having hard time because of that. The love banks, the ratio between positive interactions against the
Yeah.
negative interactions. So that's what I kind of carried with me, and the way, if it's a criticism or a stonewalling move, or
Hmm.
because act is basically out of behavior, right? So
Sure.
at least external behavior, external events, right? Okay. So, all right. Thank you for that. Let's see. I think you answered my next question about the Act Matrix. I guess you don't use it a lot right now in your couple's work. Um,
Yeah.
so my next question is kind of a segue to your being the chairman of the DEI, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Special Interest Group in ACBS. Nowadays, we're in the news, man.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We're being eliminated.
Yeah.
So I believe you were the longest running chairperson of DISIG. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know. I maybe so only because yeah,
You
because you're part of that group, right? It's hard to get people
Yes,
involved.
yes,
Volunteers come and go.
yes,
And
yes.
so I think I maybe had become the co-chair, then the chair left, so then I was the chair, and then I served, like 2 terms as chair, even though I wasn't supposed to, just because there wasn't anybody else to kind of replace me for a while.
Uh-huh,
So it was just one of those situations.
uh-huh.
And at that time, I had a lot of time. It was before my daughter was born, and
Yes,
I had, I could join the meetings. I didn't have a lot
yes.
to do.
What made you choose the ISIG over the other special interest groups in ACBS? And what motivated you? Because, I was there for chairperson for a few months, and then I had to take a leave. So, you know, it's not
Hmm.
easy seeing people come and go, you know?
Yeah. Well, when I joined, it was actually fairly robust. There was a core group of members that always showed up, and they had very kind of so, like rigid positions.
Uh,
Everyone had different duties that they were
uh,
assigned. And once I took over, then it was much more free form. People just picked up whatever needed to be done. You know,
uh,
um, but I don't know. DEI stuff it interests me. Maybe I never really had done it before and
mm,
outside of ACBS. I don't think.
mm,
Um, I've done a lot of nonprofit work in my
uh,
career, and I know you and I have talked just even in the DICIG about the differences between the United States and the Philippines.
mm,
The United States is not a homogeneous country, and so like,
mm.
um, I'm brown, um,
Yeah, yeah.
and so like I think almost everywhere that I've worked in my whole career, I've been
Uh,
only one, either the only person of color or only one of two, or very, very few people who are not white
uh-huh.
everywhere I've worked. And
Oh,
that's true even to this day.
wow.
Um, and so like being a person of Mexican descent and person of
Mm,
color
mm,
in every single place that I've worked, uh,
uh-huh,
I start to think about those types of things and how it feels to be in
uh-huh,
those spaces and
uh-huh,
how clients feel and things like that. So, um, you know, uh, I don't know. I don't even recall how I got involved
uh-huh, uh-huh.
with the DEI SIG. I think I might have actually been a part of the DEI committee of ACBS first,
Mm-hmm.
and then they recruited me to join the DEI SIG, which is a different thing.
Mm,
Afterwards, I
mm,
think that's how it went.
All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing a part of your experience there in such a, culturally diverse country like yours. And I don't know, do you have a hard time dealing with people of other, ethnicities? or racial backgrounds, or do you mostly people of your ethnicity come to therapy to see you, or you have a
Uh,
diverse? Yeah.
no, actually, well, I currently live in Racine, Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
which is I don't know the exact breakdown of demographics, but it's probably predominantly white. But we actually have a large African American population here in
Mm-hmm.
Racine and in
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very large black population
Mm-hmm.
historically, going
Uh-huh.
all the way back to the, the early 1900s. And so there's a Latino community here, but it's very small.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the in my practice currently, the majority of our caseload are white
Mm-hmm.
uh, individuals and white couples. We
Mm-hmm.
do also get some African American couples too, but
Mm-hmm.
um, just the way it breaks down in terms of who seeks therapy and who feels comfortable
Mm-hmm.
seeking therapy,
Mm-hmm.
it still trends mostly white.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you know, hopefully that will change and things like that. But um, yeah, people do seek me out sometimes. I get
Mm-hmm.
emails from people sometimes who want to work with me specifically because I am Latino,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that hasn't happened in a while though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a factor. It's a factor in people
Mm-hmm.
who seek out therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it's a factor too, because it's a factor for me. Like if I seek out a therapist to work with my own personal stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I'm conscious of that. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're working with a therapist who doesn't have a good cultural awareness of different cultures, and um, it's definitely noticeable
Mm-hmm.
when you're working with that person.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I'm connected to that in those ways. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I lived in a more diverse area than I do,
Mm-hmm.
because where I live is not the most diverse community in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wish I lived in a maybe a different area of the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but
All
you
right.
know, that's just kind of where I am right now.
Well, for me, I think it's a good sign that, you can work with all, people of different ethnic backgrounds as you. So, for me, anything that's kind of mixed racially, whether it's just two people sitting in a room, for me, that's quite an achievement. And well, thank you for sharing that. Now, yeah, that's my next question. Actually, you're one of the probably the only person from the United States who had the gall to interview me in the past. So, had the guts to do that. But I've seen you interview people from diverse backgrounds. People who are really, not the massive names in act, or and I was really inspired by your work, doing that, doing interviews with, I think, someone from Israel, or I remember
Hmm.
you interviewed someone from Israel or something, yeah. So
It was back in the day, yeah. I
yeah,
started a series,
what
yeah.
motivated you to do that?
Well, that was
You know,
part of the DEI SIG. At that time, I started a series of like interviews like this,
uh-huh.
you're right. I intentionally wanted to focus on people who are not the same people that you see on podcasts all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to get people from different countries, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up doing just a handful of those episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't keep up with it ultimately. But
Mm-hmm.
you know why? I mean, my thing is I want to hear things that are new and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you know there are there are people in the ACBS community who have been on 1,000 podcasts, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know, how much um why repeat an interview that has already been done? There's only so many questions you can ask somebody. So I
Mm-hmm.
was interested in interviewing people that have not been interviewed before,
Mm-hmm.
and asking them questions that might really spark some new insight for other people that are listening to it.
Mm,
So I mean, it was a conscious decision, but it was just because I
mm.
wanted to hear something different.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think I have some people in mind to interview. Thank you for that inspiring move that you made. It really, you know, like you and Stephen Hayes, you've really influenced me. Stephen Hayes went on my YouTube channel, I only have like less than 200 subscribers, and he went
Mm-hmm.
in and he said, even if there's only one person I can talk to, he would do the interview. And so far, I've been so grateful for him doing that. And it's a once in a lifetime experience. And you in turn gave me this idea of, I'm reminded now that I have a few people in mind I can interview. Thank you, Jacob. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, you're welcome.
So yeah, yeah. Okay. So since you've been in ACT and the couples, what do you think is the next step for you as you grow in your practice?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about my work and honestly, probably doing less clinical work. I own my own
Uh-huh.
business. I own my own business and I have a couple
Uh-huh.
of people there with me that work
Uh-huh.
with me, and I kind of manage a lot of the day-to-day stuff.
Mm.
And that takes some time. And then with my daughter who's young,
Uh-huh.
I only have time to see a couple of clients. Like my ideal caseload in real life is
Mm.
like 3 clients a week. That's my ideal caseload. Is like I want to see
Wow.
three people and that's it. Like never, no more than that. And I'm able to do that most of the time. So I'm not as plugged in as I used to be. Like I used to when I was younger and I had more time.
Uh-huh.
I would literally wake up in the morning and start reading research articles, about
Mm.
ACT and different things. I would read them just for pleasure, and then like before I went to bed, I'd be reading research articles too. It was the first thing I did every morning and the last thing I did before I went to
Okay.
sleep.
All right.
I'm not like that anymore. I used to wake up like especially during the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
Um, I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning every day, and then I would go
Mm.
into a room and I would just like think about the matrix, and I would try
Okay.
to like come up with different ways of doing the matrix, different formulations or different use cases for the matrix.
Okay.
I don't do that anymore.
Uh-huh.
um, so I used to do trainings. I used to do 9, 10 different trainings a year where I would conduct the train.
Okay.
I haven't done one in years, and
Uh-huh.
so I've dialed back on a lot of that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so like, where do I go next? I don't know. I don't foresee myself ever leaving the ACT community
Uh-huh.
because it's so flexible, and I know that the ACT community is going to continue to evolve.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But so in that way, it's hard for me to tell what comes next because I want to keep up with the latest developments in ACT. It's harder for me to do that now. But
Yeah.
I don't see myself drastically changing my
Yeah.
career anymore
Yes.
like I
I
have been
guess
known to.
I guess being a dad changed all of that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, when my daughter was born in the beginning, it was great. We had a lot of time just because she was so
Uh-huh.
small and she would sleep all the time. Now that
Uh-huh.
she's a toddler, it's actually harder than it
Uh-huh.
was when she was an infant.
Okay.
So I'm hoping, I assume that when she's in school and stuff like that, I'll have more time even again. But
Uh,
it's just the stage that we are in life right now, and
mm, mm,
trying to figure out where we. I'm thinking a lot more about my personal life and what I want to do personally, and where we're thinking about maybe trying to find a different place to live and stuff like that.
uh,
Um,
okay.
you know, but I'm not thinking about my own professional career as much as I used to.
Yes. Well, I guess I know a little bit about your business. I think you run your own clinic, right? And you have people doing therapy there for you, right? Is
Yeah,
that
I
right?
have a practice that I co-own. I have another person that owns it with me, and then
Uh,
we have another clinician on staff too. So there's three of us there,
mm-hmm.
and we just see couples, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's been working. It's been actually growing, and it seems to be in good shape. So in
Uh-huh.
that way, um, I'm not struggling for clients all the time. Back in the day, it was trying to scrounge clients up and trying to make
Uh-huh.
ends meet financially and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
The practice is steady. Practice is steady
Uh-huh.
right now, and I don't have to think about it as much because I have all these systems in place that keep it going.
Uh-huh. I see.
Um, so so that takes up less of my time,
Mm.
and I'm able to focus or spend more time just at home, with
Yes.
my daughter and stuff like that.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. So my next question would be, you're an AI guy, right?
Yeah,
And I've seen how AI changed the way I do my research. You know, uh, some of the questions I have, like if I read a book that's a little bit too technical, I kind of just copy paste it on AI, and voila, I got my answer there. Pretty
sure.
much, you know, the explanation pretty much makes sense, and sometimes I even get more out of AI. So you say AI has been a big part of is it your life or your work? Can you tell
Yeah, I
me
mean,
more about this?
yeah, I've always been interested in technology and computers and the internet and stuff
Mm,
like that since I was little.
uh-huh,
And I'm a proponent of AI. I enjoy it. I think it's something that is gonna
uh-huh,
change a lot of people's lives in a lot of ways. And I know lots of people are anti AI, which is fine. I think there are certain use cases of AI that are not workable, really. But
mm-hmm,
um, I really enjoy experimenting with it, and I don't use it clinically, really. I have some colleagues that are using it to like do transcriptions of sessions and
mm-hmm,
helping them with session notes and stuff like that. But I use it, helping me with my website and different kind of
mm-hmm,
marketing things. But I
mm-hmm.
also just use it to play around with. Like I built a while back. I built like a AI chatbot that
Okay.
sort of does act,
Oh, wow.
and is kind of a therapist. And I spent 2 weeks just working on it every single day, and I got it
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it's not the best clinician in the world. In fact, it's sort of at the level of like a student clinician who is just getting
Okay.
started seeing clients. I
Oh,
got it to
wow.
like that level of functionality.
Uh-huh.
Um, but then I also do all kinds of other stuff with AI, doing all I don't know, building little things for myself, or like building little things that help me do something else. Um,
Mm-hmm.
helping me run my business in different ways. But yeah, I mean, I think I there's no turning back. It's not like we're gonna just turn off AI, and it's not a fad like it was, like
Mm-hmm.
3D TVs were or something like that. It's gonna stick around, and it can improve the clinical work that we do in quite a number of ways. So I'm excited to see that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Do you
optimistic
believe
about
do
it.
you believe there will be an end of work era?
I always kind of dreamed of like a science fiction concept of like a person that could see a robotic therapist, right?
Okay.
Um, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
I think it's possible to do, obviously in the far future, but it's people don't have access to human
Yeah.
therapists now as it is, right?
Yeah.
And so people are going to be turning to these internet based therapies and different things, um,
So what do you
that
think
have
would
some human
be
involvement anyway.
what do you think would be the role of the therapist, the human therapist, if AI takes over?
Well, it depends. There's always going to be human therapists, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
The at minimum right now, I can see AI being like a supplemental
Mm-hmm.
aspect of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So like right now, today, like a therapist can use AI to listen to the sessions, like to transcribe in a session in real time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It has the entire transcript of everything that was done in the session,
Mm-hmm.
and then it, it, they could use that, just by saying, hey, at the end of every session, take
Mm-hmm.
take what we did
And
and
summarize.
turn it into, well, that's on the therapist end, but take everything we did,
Uh,
turn it into
uh,
3 worksheets that the
oh,
client can use to
uh,
reinforce the things that we were doing in therapy.
wow. Wow. I could use that.
And then you could email those to the client or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you could do that and you'd say like, hey, give me some direction of, what points were I not hitting, most or whatever. Like you could train it, in certain ways, and you can use
Yes.
AI to do different things. Right now, I can see a future where somebody sees a human therapist, and then offline, like they see a human therapist once a week, every other week, once a month. But then when they're
Yes.
outside a session, they might have
Yes.
the AI therapy chatbot that the
Yes.
therapist has programmed,
Yes.
and to do some additional supplemental work outside a session,
Yeah, and it could do
stuff
it
like
on
that.
your it can do it on its own, right? It just
Yeah, and
summarize everything and
you could
do the exercises
tailor it.
themselves. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
you could
Wow.
tailor it to supplement the work that y'all are doing.
Well, that's even more advanced than what I heard from Stephen Hayes, PsychFlex, because PsychFlex needs quite a bit of human intervention. You have to pick which exercises to choose, and there's no transcription, so
Yeah. Well, I think Steve is more interested in like the data analysis
uh-huh.
use cases of AI, where like, there's Stephen Hayes, and I think Andrew Gloucester are like interested in these realms of like,
Mm-hmm.
if we have a device that we're carrying with us all the time, which is our
Mm-hmm.
phone, and it
Mm-hmm.
never leaves our body, and I have a watch that is connected to my phone, it never leaves my body really, and
Uh,
like in theory we could collect all kinds of data.
mm-hmm.
Now,
So
obviously,
there,
that data could be used in bad ways, but we could collect
yeah.
all kinds of data about
Yes.
what's going on in my life at any given moment. And that
Yes.
data then could be used to treatment plan and create different interventions in
Yes.
lots of different ways.
Yes.
And AI has to be involved there to like clean up that data and
Mm-hmm.
to sort it out, because it's going to be so much more data than is capable to be sorted by hand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so AI is useful when we are able to tap into the data
Mm.
stream that is
Yes.
not exactly, but it's close to the context that we're experiencing, right? If it's
Yes.
tracking the
Yes.
context that we're living in,
Yes.
AI can sort that out, clean it up, and then it can do things, or at the very least, we can query it, and we could say,
Yes.
hey, tell me more about this, or how many times has it, this or that. Uh, Therapeutic interventions are going to be designed around that
Yeah.
soon. And I think that's the kind of the ultimate goal of those things like Cyflex and whatever, and um,
Yeah. I
capitalizing on
guess
that.
I guess they're more focused on the research, right? And
Well, yeah, at the outset. Hmm.
yeah, I tried Cyclex for 30 days for the 30-day trial,
Hmm.
and it does involve quite a bit of, you have to work it on your own app. You have to
Yeah.
teach it to send this exercise or send this test or something like that. So I think yours is pretty much in line with what I'd like to see AI do, because I'm really bad at taking notes. So
Mm.
yeah, and that kind of helps me, probably would help me track my cases and what they're doing, what practices I've asked them to do, and all that. Yeah, great. Okay, so let me go more towards the ancient times of philosophy. So, uh, as I go deeper into, I'm more the older guy, so I'm not very as tech savvy as you. So I go back in time and study the philosophy of science that we have. So as I dig deeper into RFT and all, and ACT and contextual behavioral science and functional contextualism, I because in our country, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but in my training at least, never heard about philosophy of science. All I knew
Hmm.
was all the techniques, all the models of therapy that I could use, depending on what client I'm seeing, what issues I'm dealing with in front of one single client. It could be CBT one time and psychodynamic or existential therapy at one time with one or several clients. Doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Now, I realize how philosophy of science really affected my work. So I wonder, how about you? I mean, did you have the same experience with philosophy?
Well, I'm not a big philosophy head like some people are.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in functional contextualism, that like that. If we talk about worldviews, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think I think it wasn't just you. Nobody was thinking about philosophy of science. Like nobody does now.
You mean
I think Ace.
when you did your graduate studies, you didn't do that?
No, no, I don't think any clinician really thinks about philosophy of science except for like hardcore
Mm-hmm.
ACBS guys.
Uh,
Um, that's Steve's fault, really, is because like Steve was like, "Hey, by the way, there's worldviews that we all have that sort of govern or influence the work that we do, and we should be
mm-hmm.
aware of them, and we should kind of know what they are and how they're influencing the work."
Really? Is Steve
Um,
who originated that, or I don't know?
well, I mean, obviously, that the concept of worldviews and Pepper, were laid out way before, but that's kind of Steve's superpower is he can say, "Hey, by the way, there's this thing that has always been there. We need to
Yeah.
focus on it more directly."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, but no, I don't think that really any other. If you go to a conference of
Uh-huh.
professional counselors or psychologists, where there's
Yeah.
50,000 people there at a conference, big giant conference,
Yeah.
almost zero of them are thinking, "What is my, I'm conscious of my worldview and I'm applying it in these ways intentionally."
Oh.
I don't think that that's a thing. Um,
I have a
so
funny
yeah,
story. I actually said that in a graduate class, and the professor was, "What do we care about philosophy of science? Why don't we just deal with what we're having here?" It's-
yeah,
So I thought it was always been the way it's been done in the U.S., but now I'm
no,
realizing,
no,
oh, it was Stephen Hayes's idea.
yeah. But see, the thing is, even though that everything I just said I think is true, but we all have a worldview, even though we're not conscious of it. We're not
Yeah.
consciously aware of our own worldview.
Uh,
So a lot of people have a worldview that we are like machines and a mechanistic worldview, and
uh,
and that informs, without us realizing it, the kind of work that we do. A lot
exactly.
of us have this kind of organicist worldview or whatever, that informs the kind of work that we do,
Yes.
without us being so aware of it that we're calling it that.
Yes.
Um, so the functional contextualism worldview is important because it differentiates kind of what we're doing than other people. Um,
You mean Skinner never thought of that?
oh, I'm sure he was aware of those things, but like I don't know, because I think a lot of people would argue that Skinner was more like a mechanistic worldview or something, right? Like because that's what it reads as on the top, top
Yes,
level. I don't know.
yes.
I'm not a big,
Yeah.
into, but like
Uh-huh.
so functional contextualism gives us a different worldview.
Uh-huh.
So again, that's a creation of Steve. I think Steve created functional contextualism
Okay. Maybe you
from
could
whole
check the
cloth.
let's check with AI if that's the case.
Uh, because I know Pepper has contextualism and those he lays out a
Yes.
few. Steve creates functional contextualism. I'm pretty sure
Yes.
he was developing that. And so
Yeah.
like, well, okay, yeah, it's a good framework. It's a good worldview to have
Uh-huh.
if you want your work to look a certain way, if you're thinking in a certain way. Um, but yeah, I don't get into the nitty gritty of the philosophy too much
Mm.
in my own head, even beyond that, you know.
Even in
Um,
your counseling work.
I'm interested in that idea that like
Mm-hmm.
that things are what they function as. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter the intent of something. Well, my intention is this. This happens in couples
Yes.
counseling a lot. Well, my
Yeah.
intention is this. Well,
Yeah.
sure, but look at how it's functioning.
Mm.
Look at how the behavior that you're doing is functioning.
Mm.
And if what you want is this, then you know wouldn't it make sense if we just change the behavior slightly,
Mm.
um, to see what different functions we can produce?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm interested in that level. That like I know you talk about essentialism a lot. This idea that
Mm.
like you know uh, we maybe we shouldn't have this view that things are just essential, like they have this essential quality to them that
Yeah.
dictates what they are and how they're used.
Mm.
um People have that sometimes, my thoughts are these things, my thoughts are essentially this thing, or my
Mm.
emotions are essentially this part. And
Uh-huh.
um
Mm.
so creating flexibility around that is
Mm.
important
Mm.
for clients sometimes.
Mm.
um and so that functional contextual view helps us do that.
Yeah.
um but I can hardly explain functional, like I do consultations with other clinicians that are learning about
Yes.
ACT and stuff.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like I'm doing a really bad job of like explaining functional contextualism and what it means, and uh, why it's important. I feel like I can hardly do that.
Yeah. It's really, mind rack. It racks my mind, whenever I read all these, like right now I'm reading the original RFT book,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's almost like every page I have to look it up on AI for a simpler
Yes.
explanation. And basically, it's just telling me, oh, okay, so that's how they're trying to, do this, prove something with an experiment. That's it. I don't really have to care much about that. But what I learned about philosophy science is, it really affected the way I looked at my client. Like you said, when you're mechanistic, you kind of see that client as some kind of a disorder that I have to fix this person, that this has to go away, this anxiety has to be toned down, the subjective units of distress scale and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And I didn't realize I was doing that until I came to Stephen Hayes's act immersion class, which included a mention of Stephen Pepper's world hypothesis. I have a copy of that book and never really ended up reading it. It's so technical, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's see, we have 7 minutes. Yeah, and you know since I became a functional contextualist, I realized that everything is an act in context.
Hmm.
It's not like people are doing it because they're essentially bad or evil. Uh, but there's also, that experiment, the mean and the nice puppet that Stephen Hayes would share. Did you hear him say something about that?
Well, I think I'm familiar with it, but uh,
Like,
not 100%.
one of the discoveries they found there was that we are inherently pro-social. There's a
Hmm.
cooperative side. We the infants who are pre-verbal would actually choose
Yes.
the nice puppet over the mean puppet.
Yes.
But as I dug into it with AI, I realized that's just part of the story. There are four parts actually. There's a sense of justice in us, and there's also, what's the other one? Uh Selfishness in us.
Hmm.
And that justice, of course, is a positive aspect of our nature. That selfishness can be actually addressed by education. That's the two other parts. The second
Mm.
part, which is very interesting, and which leads me up to my next question. The second part, so first part is pro-social, right? But the second part is tribal, that we hate differences. Even if you like chocolate and I like vanilla, I would hate you for liking chocolate.
Sure, sure.
We
Yeah.
kind of like fight over the most trivial stuff, and that
Hmm.
makes a makes us a tribal species, no? And I can see that play out in world events right now, and how people are killing people.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, Sadly, with the current leadership in your country, DEI
Hmm.
is being eliminated all across government institutions. So I feel really sad about that. As so, uh, so my question is, with your work as a therapist and now as a father, you're influencing the most important person in your life right now, your kid, right? Um,
Hmm.
and how she will grow up. Okay. So how do you think our work as learners or researchers in psychology can help improve uh, the future of this planet? I mean,
Yeah,
uh, how do you think our field, you know, uh, I as I go through my deeper study, I see how uh, Steve's favorite book is Walden 2,
hmm,
because it's
hmm,
really an attempt by a psychologist to create a utopia,
yeah,
So how, what would you at this point in your career, or what do you think you can contribute as a
yeah.
psychologist?
Well, I was thinking about that too back, when you were trying to bring things up too back in the DI SIG a long time ago. The way that I look at things now is, well, one,
Mm-hmm,
it's all language. It's language all the way down, right? Human
mm-hmm,
behavior is ultimately verbal behavior.
mm-hmm,
Um, and the levers of power that we have are not the levers of power that we would want to have as people like us that are thinking about these things and know that we have some behavior change technology. We have technology that can change the world in some way. Like I know back maybe 10 years ago, I was thinking like, what if we could just like sit down the world leaders like in a room and like have them learn some of these skills and practice some of these interventions, and like wouldn't that be so powerful to change things? I don't believe in that anymore. um,
mm-hmm,
uh, I think if you look at historically,
mm-hmm,
when you don't have hard power, like if I don't have a big stick that I can slam, beat somebody's head in with,
mm-hmm,
if I can't control people in that way,
mm-hmm,
then the lever of control that I have is language.
mm-hmm,
And so like influence,
mm-hmm,
we might call it propaganda or marketing.
mm-hmm,
Why do people smoke cigarettes every day? From the dawn of time until the 80s, 90s when it started to decrease in the United States is
mm-hmm,
it was propaganda. It looked cool. There was all
mm-hmm,
kinds of posters and commercials and advertising telling you how cool it would be if you smoked and the benefits of smoking, right?
mm-hmm,
That turned around just through language. When people,
mm-hmm,
once they realized that actually smoking is very harmful,
mm-hmm,
that saying, hey, by the way, it's going to kill you, that's not going to get people to change a behavior.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But saying actually smoking is not cool. You actually look kind of ugly if you smoke. That gets people's attention, and
Okay.
people stop smoking. Now everyone's vaping, right? But language can influence people's behavior, but
Yeah.
not in the channel that we think we can. So like, I think we are in a strong position to start using language to influence culture. We have to
Mm-hmm,
influence culture first, and then leaders will rise, from that culture. We can't expect the work we do to change leaders that are already in power and try to influence them very much. I don't think that's really doable. But we
mm-hmm,
can influence the masses, the masses of people. Think about Karl Marx, right? He wrote a series of books
mm-hmm.
that were attempting to influence the masses, influence the world in some way. And to
Yeah.
some degree, he succeeded, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he laid out, you know, uh, communism and kind of what it could look like and why it's important just through
Yeah.
words on a page, right?
Yes.
Um, all the big social reforms and major changes in the world have come through language. You think about like the break from Catholicism into like Catholicism and uh, the other forms of Christianity,
Protestantism.
Protestantism.
Uh,
It was Martin Luther nailing a document to a door, right, with words on
yes.
it. uh,
Yes.
Language is extremely powerful, but we can't really influence the people that are at the top of the pyramid. We have to influence the people that are at the bottom of the pyramid, and then
Mm-hmm.
create social change in that way.
Yeah.
Um, so we know how to do it. That's what marketing and advertising is. I drink soda all day long, and it's because of market. I've been influenced over the years of conditioned in that way. We can use that power for good,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be by trying to overthrow some. That I'm going to change Donald Trump's the way he thinks about things. Like that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
but I can change the way people think on the ground level,
Yeah.
and I think that's possible to do.
All right. Okay, well, that's about the time we have. Thank you. And I know you have to run back to your daughter now. So,
Thank you so much. It was actually a pleasure. Anytime. It was just this hour was just I didn't realize it at the time, but I have to get out of here. But I always love talking to you and enjoy everything that you have to say, and the way that you think about the world is so wonderful. So I'm sure we'll see each other again. But anytime you want to have another interview or anything, just let me know.
all right. You take care, Jacob. And I miss you guys there. You know,
Yeah,
we had so much fun doing the DEI before.
yeah.
And
Thank you
also
so much.
our video workshop. Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay.
All right. All right.
You
Bye
take
bye.
care. Bye bye.